Hello everyone and welcome to this special little video I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about tanking in this video because the last two characters I leveled in SWTOR were both tanks. It was a Guardian and a Juggernaut. My Juggernaut is level 54 right now, but should be level 55 fairly quickly. Just have a few dailies to do really and a little bit of Makeb to do and we'll be 55 in no time. So the last two characters I have leveled have been tanks. And we're going to do the next few series of videos focusing on tanking, and we're going to start with this one, which is why it's awesome to be a tank. We're going to start positively, okay? We're going to talk about the positives of tanking. And the biggest positive, the number one biggest positive of being a tank is that you are in demand. You are a kind of a niche class, in a niche role in the game. Tanking is a role which is not overpopulated, so this means that we get to do group content whenever we feel like it. Feel like queuing for hard mode flashpoint? Queue for hard mode flashpoint. It will pop instantly. 99% of the time it'll be instant pop, or it will at least, the queue will at least pop within 5 minutes. The same with operations. If we queue, I've queued as DPS or healer, and we queue for, you know, 20 minutes to half an hour as a healer. You're looking at an hour to an hour and a half as a DPS. It's a long time as a DPS. And again, as a tank, pretty much instant. You know, you have that kind of minority class. So if you really want to see the content, being a tank is not a bad idea. If you want to see all the end content and get into raids and get into do group content, it's a really good role to be in. The other side to this role, of course, the second biggest role is soloing. Soloing is a hell of a lot easier as a tank. I have to say, doing Oricon solo as a tank, easy as hell, especially as a Guardian with your focus defense. It's just such an awesome cooldown. It basically heals you when you take damage, which is such an awesome ability. It's kind of useless as a DPS cooldown in a raid, unless we're taking damage constantly, unless we're in a sort of constant one of those phases where we're constantly taking damage, which, you know, they're very kind of situational in that. But as a tank, we should be taking damage at least if we have threat on the enemy. If we've aggroed the enemy, we are going to be taking damage, so it is very useful as a tank. It's pretty useful for soloing as well, but again, I really like the Juggernaut and Guardian tank. I do have a Vanguard tank as well. Not a big fan of the Vanguard tank. They're alright. I mean, for sort of AoE threat, they're pretty good, but the problem I have with them is they're not very good at soloing. They never do don't do enough damage for me, the Vanguard tanks. The Juggernaut tank is actually not too bad. I've yet to try an Assassin tank or Shadow tank. I do have a Shadow at level 11 at the moment. I have an Assassin at 55, but she is DPS spec, and I'm not gonna change her to tank spec because I've never played the class as tank before. I really don't want to be going into a hard mode flashpoint or an operation with a class I've never played as a tank. So whenever I decide to level my Shadow, I'll probably level my Shadow as tank, because it's always good to level as a tank or healer, because you can learn the class as you go, rather than building a whole skill tree up and having all these abilities that you don't know what they do and having to just sit and read the tooltips. And I don't want to read guides on it. I want to learn. I like to learn by doing. So again, that's how I kind of learn how to play the Juggernaut and the Vanguard, by leveling them as tanks, and I always find that's a better experience. Leveling as a tank is actually pretty decent, actually, because we can just queue whenever we want for a normal flashpoint. We don't have to get stuck in the Kuat Drive Yards grind. Although tanking in Kuat Drive Yards is fun. If you've never tanked in Kuat Drive Yards, you should do it. It is awesome. It's a really good experience. Tanking without a healer, it actually teaches you a lot about the use of your defensive cooldowns and when to interrupt. We always interrupt. I can do the elite defenders now, taking very little damage in Kuat Drive Yard just by interrupting, just by getting my interrupt, getting my stun in. I can do it taking about, you know, 20 to 25% damage, and that's obviously it's bolstered because you're bolstered to 55. I don't know what it'll be like at 55 when you start to gear my Juggernaut for tanking, but you never really do Kuat Drive Yard as a tank. Well, you never do it at 55 anyway, so because the rewards are just so pitiful for a level 55 in Kuat Drive Yards that it just isn't worth it. But yeah, you should really try any of the tactical flashpoints as a tank. Some of them can be a little bit harder than normal because you don't have a healer to bail you out, so you have to use a lot of your defensive abilities. You have to use your defensive cooldowns, you have to use your interrupt, your stun, and it makes you a better tank overall, because a good tank is always going to be interrupting when possible. A good tank is looking for their stun, they're looking for ways that we can take less damage, because again, we don't want the healer to be spending their full time healing us. If the healer can take part in a little bit of DPS, it makes the fight go a lot quicker. In operations we have to be healed though, because some bosses we can't interrupt, or our mitigation will be on cooldown and we have to save it for certain phases for bosses. But other than that, it is pretty good to be a tank. Soloing and group content are nice. The only downside to solo content is that it takes us a long time to do normal quests because we do a lot less damage, but we'll cover more on that in the negative video. But again, if you're doing heroic quests, I've soloed heroic 2s and heroic 4s with my tank. It's pretty easy. Again, I can do the Oricon quest solo in tank spec. I can do it with certain DPS, but they have to be very well geared. But I can get that. I can get the champions on Oricon down. I found Oricon was a breeze as a tank. I don't know why people complained. I did a video about the Oricon bosses and doing a guide on how to beat them, and a lot of people complained to me, I'm a tank, I do no damage. I was a tank, I was able to solo them easily, even soloed the heroic 2 champions easily. It was so easy as a tank, we take so little damage anyway, and we have so much mitigation. It was easy as a Guardian tank in 168 gear. I was 168 gear, mind you, but you know, it was still pretty easy, to be honest, because we do have our heal to full button and our ensure, which is pretty nice for defensive abilities. I just don't like the Vanguard tank. I just think the Vanguard tank lacks a little bit in the sort of kind of active mitigation that we can do. I like that about the Juggernaut and Guardian. They're pretty good for that, and they do reasonable damage as well. Their damage is okay. I tend to buy best in slot Cartel Market crystals because you can use them at level 10. Your best in slot crystal is your 41 power crystal. Pretty handy at level 10, especially if you're a tank. You don't want the endurance really, because the endurance is kind of irrelevant as long as you're keeping the rest of your gear up while leveling. You probably want the power crystal just to get that little bit more threat generation. It helps you out a lot, especially at low level when you don't have an AoE taunt and you only have smash essentially as your AoE ability, as your only AoE ability to keep threat on multiple targets. So it comes in handy having 2 best in slot crystals, because if you buy the collection unlock, you can buy it for your account and you can just transfer multiple crystals to your account and give your companion them as well. It's a good little tip for leveling. But again, being a tank is a pretty cool thing. It's a pretty cool thing. I'm surprised that more people don't tank, and we'll get into that in the negatives, why people don't tank. And well, that's all for this video. So I still need to try a shadow tank. I'll need to give one of them a go. Didn't get a chance to play on the double XP week because I was too focused on my Juggernaut. So that is all for this video. If you like tanking, let me know what you like about tanking. Again, I'll tell you what I don't like about tanking in the next video. So thank you for joining me, and see you soon, and goodbye.